Most people reach a financial moment they never see coming. You've been grinding for months or years, watching your account creep upward, and then one day you hit a number that changes something inside your brain. That number is $10,000. It's not flashy or glamorous, and nobody throws a party when you get there. But if you've just crossed this threshold, something fundamental shifted in how you see money, risk, and your own future. The question is, do you realize what's happening? 4 out of every 10 Americans have less than $1,000 saved right now, which means most people in your life have never experienced what you're about to learn. In a minute, I'll show you exactly why this threshold matters so much psychologically, and more importantly, how most people accidentally sabotage themselves right at this point. If you've hit $10,000, take 5 minutes and pay attention to this part. The moment you cross into 5 figures, your brain stops treating money like a fragile thing. Up until now, money felt dangerous. It was the thing between you and financial collapse. Your savings was a shield against emergencies, car repairs, medical bills, job loss. Every dollar in that account was a day you could survive without working. The psychological load of this is enormous. You check your balance obsessively. You feel guilty buying coffee. You do math in your head constantly. You carry the weight of knowing that one bad week could erase months of discipline. Then something shifts. That $10,000 deposit lands, and your nervous system recognizes a new threshold for the first time. You're not one emergency away from zero. Your mind moves from survival mode to something else entirely. This isn't about logic or mathematics. It's a psychological mathematics. It's a psychological-based reflection point that neuroscientists have studied for years. Loss aversion, that primal fear of losing what you've built, starts to quiet down just slightly. Now here's the twist. Alongside that relief comes an entirely different type of thinking. For the first time, you start asking questions you couldn't afford to ask before. What if I invested this? What if I built something? What if I took a calculated risk? You've spent years thinking, how do I keep this? Now you're thinking, what can this become? This shift from scarcity mindset to opportunity mindset is one of the most dangerous moments in your financial life, because most people mishandle it. The math starts mattering now, in a way it never did before. With $1,000, compound growth was abstract. With $10,000, compound growth becomes visible. If you take that $10,000 and invest it conservatively at 7% annually, you're looking at roughly $20,000 in a decade without adding another penny. 10,107 to the power of 10 equals sign, roughly 19,700. That's not prediction or hope, that's mathematics. For the first time, wealth building stops feeling like an impossible dream and starts feeling like a formula you can actually execute. The emergency fund psychology changes too. You're no longer living paycheck to paycheck in the classical sense. You've built a genuine financial cushion. An unexpected car repair no longer threatens your survival. A medical bill doesn't derail your rent. This change in daily stress is physiologically measurable. Cortisol levels drop when you stop running constant financial anxiety. Sleep improves, relationships improve. Your brain has the mental bandwidth to think about something other than bills. Around the 75-word mark, something important happens. Your peer group shifts. When you had $500 saved, you hung around people with similar financial realities. Now that you've hit 5 figures, you're in a different room. You're reading different content. You're noticing different opportunities. A friend mentions they're considering an investment property. Another talks about starting a side business. You're not hearing these conversations from people at the $500 level. This invisible social shift is crucial because it exposes you to entirely new possibility. But here's where most people get stuck. When you hit $10,000, the behavior that got you here, aggressive saving and constant discipline, starts to feel like it's not paying off anymore. You've built this cushion. Your brain thinks it's time to relax, so you start spending the freed up mental energy instead of reinvesting it. You grab that coffee without guilt. You buy the thing you've been putting off. You take the nicer vacation. And these aren't terrible decisions by themselves. The trap is that you spend the psychological relief you've earned instead of compounding it. This is where the gap widens between people who quietly build wealth and people who stay financially stuck. Getting from 0 to 10,000 is hard. It requires discipline, repetition, and fighting your own nervous system. Getting from 10,000 to 25,000 is actually faster because your money starts working alongside your effort. But most people never make the jump. They hit 10,000 and plateau there, telling themselves they've made it, when really they've just completed the tutorial. If you stop saving now and spend the mental relief instead, $10,000 won't feel like enough in 3 years when an emergency hits or when you see an opportunity you can afford. You'll realize you've been spinning in place. This is the part nobody notices. The next threshold is $25,000, and it's where everything accelerates. Between 10 and 25,000, compound growth is working noticeably. You're also more likely to start investing properly instead of just holding cash. You have options you didn't have before. Business loans become accessible. Credit terms improve. You can afford to say no to bad situations. You can take a risk on a side project without destroying your household finances. The psychological freedom at 25,000 is fundamentally different from 10,000. Let me show you what this actually looks like in real life. Take a software developer who hits $10,000 saved up until now. They've been the kind of person who freelances on nights and weekends while working their day job, purely for extra income. Once they hit that psychological threshold, something changes. They now think about whether they could do freelance work full-time, at least for a few months. The $10,000 gives them a runway. The mental shift means they actually consider it. A year later, they've built a client base that pays more than their day job. None of that was possible at $5,000 because the fear was still too large. Or consider a nurse working hospital shifts who hits $10,000 in savings. She's always wanted to move to a better apartment, but it felt irresponsible. Suddenly, $10,000 makes it possible, not because she can afford the move. Plenty of people on her salary can do that, but because the psychological permission has changed. She has something real to fall back on. The mental tax of living in an inadequate space, which was eating her energy and health, finally becomes addressable within a year. Her stress drops, her sleep improves, and she's earning more because she has the energy to pursue certification. Or a carpenter who's been trading time for money with no safety net. $10,000 means he can turn down a job that treats him badly. He can take a week off without panic. He can finally buy the better tools that improve his work quality. He can start networking with commercial contractors instead of just taking whatever residential work comes along. 2 years later, his income has doubled because he had the courage to be selective. In each case, the $10,000 threshold unlocked something psychological first, and the financial behavior followed. Now, most people miss this part entirely. The trap isn't about spending the $10,000 on consumption. If that were it, we could just educate people to save more. The real trap is lifestyle inflation disguised as relief. You stop feeling the pressure, so you let your expenses creep up. Your rent-to-income ratio was 32% when you had $2,000 saved. Now it's 35% because you can afford it. Your food budget was lean at $5,000 saved. Now you order delivery twice a week because you've earned it. None of these individual decisions is devastating, but together they keep the savings rate constant while your income grows. You make $30,000 more per year and end up with the same emergency fund 5 years later. This is the part where it gets expensive. The financial math of lifestyle inflation compounds negatively. Let's say you make $60,000 annually. You've spent 2 years getting to $10,000 saved, but you could have done it in a year and 3 months if you'd maintained discipline. That's 9 months of additional earning you wasted. If you continued from that point and built $25,000 in the next year, you'd be in a completely different position by age 35 than people who spend the mental relief. This compounds forward for the next 20 years. The difference between someone who stalled at $10,000 and someone who pushed to $25,000 becomes hundreds of thousands of dollars. Most people miss this. The stress that disappears once you hit $10,000 is real and valuable. You deserve to experience that relief. The danger is thinking the relief means you can stop paying attention. It's the opposite. The $10,000 milestone is exactly when you should increase your focus because momentum is finally on your side. This is when most people drop the ball. Here's the psychological reality most people face. You've spent years hearing that saving money is impossible. Your parents struggled, your friends struggle. The culture tells you that you're either born wealthy or you're stuck. So when you hit $10,000, there's a part of you that thinks you've defied gravity. You've done the impossible thing. Now you can rest, but you're actually just at the starting line. You're at the point where the leverage you've built starts multiplying. If you stop here, you've done something impressive and learned something valuable, but you've left everything on the table. The decision you make in the months after crossing this threshold determines your financial reality for the next decade. If you recognize that $10,000 was hard but $25,000 will be easier, and you stay disciplined, you'll be in a position most people never reach. If you treat $10,000 as the finish line and spend the mental relief, you'll be stuck right there in 5 years, wondering why your savings aren't growing even though your income is. And honestly, most people, probably 75%, spend that relief. They hit $10,000 and then plateau. The people who don't plateau understand something important. That psychological shift is a gift, but only if you use it to build more. The diminishing pressure isn't your signal to relax, it's your signal to expand. You've proven you can save, now prove you can invest and build. You've proven you can survive an emergency. Now prove you can seize an opportunity. The $10,000 is proof of concept, not the destination. Let me be clear about something that matters here. None of this requires you to become obsessed with money or spend your life thinking about finances. It's not about becoming a miser or accepting that you can never enjoy the present. What it's about is recognizing a psychological pattern that most people don't see and making one conscious choice in that window for maybe 6 to 12 months after hitting $10,000. The question is, do I let the freed up mental energy go toward spending, or do I channel it toward building? Most of your friends have already answered that question by spending. The people you don't know about yet, the ones you'll hear about in 5 years who had financial freedom or started a business or bought a house, they answered it differently. Not because they're smarter or more disciplined, because they recognize the inflection point. This is where compound interest finally kicks in. At $5,000, compound interest on your savings is basically invisible. At $10,000, you're earning $40 to $70 a month on your money, just sitting there, doing nothing. That's groceries, that's gas, that's something your salary no longer has to cover. As you move from $10,000 to $15,000 to $25,000, that passive income grows. By the time you hit $25,000 and it's invested properly, you might be earning $120 to $150 a month passively. That's not life-changing yet, but it's the beginning of money working for you instead of against you. The psychology shifts again. You're not just saving anymore. You're building. Let me address what happens to your relationship. Financial stress is one of the biggest predictors of relationship conflict. When you and your partner are both carrying the weight of financial fragility, it seeps into everything. You're irritable. You're anxious. You're defensive. You avoid conversations about money because they bring up too much fear. Once you cross into $10,000, that stress begins to lift. You can have conversations about money that aren't about survival. You can dream together, instead of just trying to keep the boat above water. Couples who push through to $25,000 report a fundamental shift in their relationship quality. Not because money buys happiness, but because the mental load finally distributes more fairly. One person isn't carrying all the anxiety anymore. Now, if you haven't hit $10,000 yet, the path is actually clearer than most people realize. The jump from 0 to 10,000 is the hardest in percentage terms, but it's the most doable in absolute terms because you don't need to do anything complicated. You need 3 things: a realistic spending plan that cuts out waste, a way to automate savings so it happens without willpower, and honestly just time. If you make $50,000 a year after taxes, you have enough room in your budget to save $10,000 in roughly 2 years if you're willing to be intentional. 2 years. Not forever. Not impossible. Just 2 years of discipline. And you join the minority of people who've crossed this threshold. The math works. You're not broke. The system is just designed to make you feel broke. Once you see that, the path becomes clear. If you're already past $10,000, the question you need to ask yourself is simple. Am I still building, or am I in the trap? Have your savings been growing at the same rate for the last year, or have they slowed? Has your spending crept up alongside your income? Are you feeling the mental relief and interpreting it as permission to relax? Most people are. That's not a judgment. That's just how our psychology works. But it's also where the split happens. The people who recognize the trap and adjust now are the ones building toward financial independence. The people who don't recognize it are the ones who'll be having financial stress conversations in their 40s. Here's what I want you to understand about your next step. The shift from $10,000 to $25,000 takes less time than 0 to $10,000 because your money is working for you. It's no longer just your effort. You're also earning passive income on your balance. You're more willing to take calculated risks on side income because you have a cushion. Your confidence is higher, which often means your earning power increases too. Everything compounds together. The psychological barriers that slowed you down at lower balances don't exist anymore. You've proven you can do this. Now you're just scaling it. 3 things you need to remember. First, the $10,000 threshold is real psychology, not just a nice round number. Second, most people plateau here, which means if you don't, you're already ahead of the vast majority. Third, the next milestone of $25,000 isn't far away if you stay disciplined. If you're trying to hit $10,000, focus on finding ways to cut spending and automate savings. If you've already hit it, watch the next video on the $25,000 threshold, because that's where the leverage really starts multiplying. Comment below and tell us where you are in this journey. That genuinely helps us know what content to make next.